We're both live and recording at this particular time. William Murray is going to talk to us about the design of the audit trail. Should be very interesting because the audit trail should supply us with a real view inside of the organization. Go ahead, Bill. Take it away.
Morning, Joe. Morning, colleagues. About 40 years ago, I wrote security design guidance for IBM product developers. It focused on CIA. Now, I know that you think you know what CIA stands for, but in this case, it's not likely. It stood for 3 properties of secure systems: controllability, integrity, and auditability. Properties of systems rather than of data. These 3 properties were the organizing structure for an early security conference organized by Dr. Ruth Davis, Director of the National Bureau of Standards, and Dr. Walter Carlson of the ACM at Rancho Santa Fe in California. At the time, the 3 properties were peer. Controllability is that property of a system that permits management to exercise a directing or restraining influence over its behavior, use, or content. Integrity is the property of wholeness or completeness. A system can be said to manifest integrity to the extent that it conforms to a complete specification. It's the property of a system that permits management to make confident, predictive statements about its behavior. Predictability is the test for integrity. If for every stimulus one can predict the response, for both the case where the system is performing correctly and for the case where it is failing, then the system can be said to manifest integrity. Auditability is that property of a system that provides for relative ease in examining, verifying, or demonstrating it. While such a determination is usually made by the managers of the system, it must be possible for it to be done by someone who is independent of the system. For example, system evaluators, accreditors, or auditors. In the case of an information system, it must be possible to show that the system is working and is being used as intended, that it conforms to expectations, such as standards or good practice, and that the subject data conforms to such expectations as consistency, for example, the books balance, and accuracy, for example, the books agree with the condition and the performance of the enterprise. Of course, these 3 properties of a system are mutually dependent. They're indivisible. They are simply different manifestations of a single property of the system that we might call securability. In the 40 years since Rancho Santa Fe, we have focused on the controllability and the integrity of the system at the expense of auditability. That's not to say that our systems are not auditable, only that they are less so than they might be, and the results less useful than they might be. To the extent that they are auditable, the condition is more the result of opportunity, not to say chance, rather than design or intent. Part of our problem is that we equate auditing with logging, logs with journals, and an ad hoc collection of logs and journals with an audit trail. Audit is not logging and journaling. Rather, audit is what one does with logs and journals. We think that if we simply turn on all available logs and journals, that we are making our systems auditable. Not. Even if that were true, for performance and storage reasons, we often fail to log what we ought, save it long enough, or in some cases even turn on the logs. Having done all the right things, then we often fail to look at the record until after we have other evidence that something is wrong. At Rancho Santa Fe, we came up with a strategy for the auditability of systems. We said that in order for a system to be auditable, it should, 1, be composed of auditable subsystems, down to a primitive or elemental level. 2, the components must communicate with each other only across specified and simple protocols across specified interfaces. 3, there must exist the capability to record all communication between independent processes, events, that is logs and and content, that is, journals, on both sides of the interfaces. At a minimum, we must make a record at the point where control passes from the control of one person or process to that of another. Note that one can demonstrate the completeness of the log on one side of the interface by reconciling it to the one on the other side of the interface. 4, the records must contain adequate reference both to one another and to the external environment. For example, time, place, user, authority, and relevant context. Whether one calls these 4 items requirements or strategy, they should be useful in either case. An audit trail is the composition of source documents, logs, journals, records, changes, error corrections, databases, confirmations, statements, and metadata of an application or system. In the modern world, where source documents have all but been replaced by direct user entry, the confirmation page and the email confirmations become an important part of the audit trail. An audit trail is designed. It is not simply an ad hoc collection of logs and journals kept for other purposes. The idea of design implies a set of objectives or intentions. We must know what we are trying to accomplish. Many of the objectives of an audit trail will be application specific. However, there's a minimum set of things that every audit trail must do. The audit trail must be designed and crafted in such a way that we can always tell how a record came to look the way it does. Further, what it looks like at any time in the past. It must include the ability to recover from failures and reconstruct as necessary. We must be able to fix accountability for every significant change to the level of a single individual. In making your system auditable and in crafting your audit trail, consider the use of a log management program. Such a program may be used to organize and cross-reference various systems logs and journals, filter them, and present them in useful ways. While such a program is no substitute for design, it can be a powerful tool for implementing your design. A caution: when we think about auditing and auditability, there's a natural tendency to think of the auditor. The system must provide adequate visibility for the auditor. However, the real test is whether or not the system provides adequate visibility for the managers and operators of the application. If it does, then it will usually satisfy the auditors. The access control system is how we limit the privileges and capabilities of users to those which they must have in order to do their jobs. The audit system is how we hold users accountable for the use of those privileges and capabilities. The former is a preventative control. It works to the extent that it works automatically and by default. The latter is reactive and remedial control. It works to the extent that we use it. Nonetheless, Courtney argued that good accountability could compensate for lax access control more easily than lax access control could account, or that strict access control could compensate for accountability. Now, the way that we as security professionals have our influence on the auditability of systems is by standards and guidelines. Crafting these recommendations into your standards and guidelines is a difficult effort. It's going to require concentration and thought on your part. It's going to require design and effort. But of course, as I often remind us, that is why we are called professionals and are paid the big bucks. Next week, I will see you from Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, where I'm going to be skiing. Look forward to it.